Yeah, as people start to trickle in, just want to say thank you guys so much and welcome to the first ever THORChain community weekly live stream. Um, this is something we've been kind of kicking around, an idea we've been kicking around for a few weeks now with the Nine Realms team and others in the THORChain community, and then just kind of came together. Really, we've been doing all the different ecosystem projects have been doing different live streams in Discord and on Twitter Spaces, and we've really come to appreciate the power that these things have to keep the community informed, engaged, and connected. And so it's a thrill and a joy to be launching this at really such a critical and exciting time for the THORChain ecosystem. Um, and so with that, Gavin, are you here?
Yeah. Hey, Alan.
How's it going, sir? How's your day going?
Going great, you guys. It's been 24 hours since Ethereum has been restarted, so that's a good 24 hours.
It's been a great 24 hours, and we're excited to be diving into that, and also excited to really introduce you and Nine Realms to the community. I think anybody that's following closely on Twitter or in Discord, like the Dev Discord, will be familiar with your work. But we're excited to give you a platform here to share more about the work you guys are doing.
Stoked to be here, and also stoked to just to the first of many, right? Like it's kind of like it's a new chapter in THORChain's history, and so creating some of these rituals where we can get together as a community to share some of the updates and also ask questions. I think it's a great idea. So, anyways, this is good call.
Awesome. Absolutely. And it's fun too. I mean, this stuff is just it's a good time to get everyone together and to, just jam on THORChain and the protocol, the developments happening at at the protocol level, and then with ThorSec and the security, all the updates around that. And then also to give all of the ecosystem projects and community members a chance to share their updates and announcements. So, with that, I think we can hop in for some intros here. I think we have a few people on stage. I mean, I guess it's three of us. Thor Lady, who's was also instrumental in organizing this initiative, as she is with so many other initiatives in the ecosystem. She'll be hosting. It's midnight for her now in Asia, but our intention for this call is to do this weekly, twice a week in U.S. time zones. So around this time, like morning or noon U.S. And then twice a month rather, for U.S. time zones, and then twice a month in Asia. And so we get the kind of global spread there to really kind of serve and reflect the global nature of THORChain and crypto more broadly. But to start, let's do a quick round of intros here. Gavin, do you want to give a super quick intro about who you are and the work you're doing with Nine Realms?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi everybody, I'm Gavin, founder of Nine Realms. So yeah, I've been in crypto for a while. Started on the engineering side. I was the first engineer at BitGo years ago, so I was building a lot of security infrastructure with guys. But yeah, I've been active behind the scenes with protocols and teams for a long time, and I've been working with the THORChain core team for the last couple of years behind the scenes as well. And then it kind of became apparent and started this year that something like Nine Realms would need to exist in order. THORChain's a major layer one that's emerging, and as you build a major layer one like this, you've got a lot of surface area to cover. We've seen security come to the forefront, but there's a lot of other areas to execute on. And so it's like the things that kind of get you from the beginning all the way to the end. The movements need to change throughout. And it's like we had the first season of THORChain. Everybody kind of knows what that looked like. And we've got a new season of THORChain that's kind of starting to emerge. And so that's kind of where, on the Nine Realms side, we've got a team of 13 folks, a lot of engineering, that we can bring a lot of firepower to this project and focus like a laser on it. So love the ecosystem, and that's just a little bit of background.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you. Something that I noticed about Nine Realms, the first time I saw you guys mentioned, it was bringing institutional capital into THORChain liquidity pools. And then through my work with the Thor starter team, came to find that you were doing much more than that behind the scenes. First, just helping build, invest, and advise in ecosystem projects. And then after the Summers after the Summers events, seeing the role that Nine Realms played in all the different initiatives to help rebuild, strengthen, and harden the THORChain network. The THORChain community and the THORChain team, we're really lucky to have you guys in Nine Realms as seriously some of the best backers and community members and investors and boosters that a community could hope for. So thank you for all the work you're doing.
Oh, thanks. And on the other side, like, I don't know if people realize how special this and unique this community is. Like, we're doing something extraordinarily unique in this domain. And I mean, THORChain as a network, and people are going to realize it as we just build more and more of it. But as it becomes a backbone, people are going to realize like the nature of this community is why this thing is successful.
Absolutely. And yeah, so much about in crypto and the THORChain community as well. It's emergent, right? Like it's as much as possible, and THORChain stays very true to this ethos. It's working towards decentralization. There's planned obsolescence on the roadmap, but even before that, we're seeing so much like this initiative and Nine Realms and THORChat's DAO and all the ecosystem projects, the interfaces, the applications, the exchanges, the front ends are just community emergent, and they're not really being centrally planned or coordinated by like a core team. So yeah, and I think yeah, this call as well is a reflection of that. Also, just by way of quick introduction, I'm Zero X Wing. I'm the founder of RUNEBASE.org and THORGuard's NFT project. I was an early contributor and investor in THORChain from 2018. And then now most of my work is around education and news and guides for the THORChain ecosystem at RuneBase. I host the weekly RuneBase podcast. And then with the THORGuard's NFT project, we're building a really fun community galvanizing art NFT project. And you can learn more about those on Twitter. Just search for like RuneBase or THORGuards. But yeah, we have a fun kind of agenda here. We want to. It's a super exciting time for THORChain ecosystem, and so we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in THORChain with Gavin here, and others in the ecosystem are invited to request to join on stage. And we'll talk about everything that's happening both at the core protocol level, the development status, THORChain's current place at an inflection point, looking forward to the future, what's looking forward to scaling, and then also ecosystem announcements. And so there's a lot going on in all the ecosystem projects, including THORSwap's IDO that was announced. We have members from the THORSwap team here. Broker released a Q4 roadmap. XDeFi wallet has launched publicly. So we have updates from some of the ecosystem projects. But with that, Gavin, you want to talk a little bit about, this is something that we've been kind of talking about in just DMs about this inflection point that we're at for the THORChain ecosystem. It's the term next 100x for THORChain is like kind of this like fun idea for this like this next chapter for what we're looking forward to for THORChain. You want to talk a bit about like where we are in terms of this inflection point and why this is such a critical time for THORChain and what we have to look forward to?
Yeah, that's a really, so to give everybody kind of listening a little bit of context, one of the things, so as he was mentioning, the kind of the community here has been completely emergent. So you got THORChain as this just like heavy lifting asset backbone. It's taking care of all the stuff that's just unsexy that nobody wants to do, like handling the idiosyncrasies of sending swaps across chains, all that type of stuff. And so what it's left to the community are some of the pieces that are typically planned by a group, right? Like the interfaces, the different middleware layers, like Midgard, things like that. And so we've had THORChain has kind of had its first season, right? It's had this like massive run up, and to get to the place where we have this backbone that's actually working, right? Like when you think about something like Shapeshift, one of domestically the top companies, they run their infrastructure on THORChain. That's a huge statement. And as more regulatory pressure and compliance, and like this environment is going to keep moving this way. And so we've got this backbone, but we've got to strengthen it. We've also got to kind of start building this thing out. And so what's kind of become apparent to everybody, if you've been watching, I'm guessing you feel this too, is that the next 100x for THORChain looks different than our first 100x, right? This next shift in growth of the ecosystem is going to look a lot different, and it's going to require, from our standpoint, it's going to require coordination at a different scale and at a different level, which means community starting to show up and work on different aspects of this networking project in very different ways, right? We've got a lot of interfaces that are starting to come together, but now it's kind of like, okay, coordinating with amongst those interfaces on who's going to start contributing to what libraries, who's going to be building what, who's going to take ownership for given areas, above the core protocol and those types of things. So it's like, if the first season was about proving that things work and making sure that we can show the world, hey, THORChain is and can do what it said it's going to do in terms of threshold signatures and going from native Bitcoin to native Ethereum or ERC20, like that works and it works well. And we've been really spending the last chunk of time hardening the protocol. But for this next season, it's really about everybody who's tuning in, like this community. It's about us coming together to figure out and coordinate at a new level to make this possible, because this will be one of the largest asset settlement backbones in all of crypto, and that's quite a statement.
Absolutely. And something that we're thinking through now, in with this next 100x initiative is how to enable and how to empower more community members, more developers to, first of all, understand about what's happening, both at the protocol level and at the ecosystem level, and then get involved, have the resources to understand what's happening, to learn about the protocol, to see where there's opportunities, where people might contribute. And so, like for now, like, do you have any thoughts on, like, if someone's listening now and they're interested, they're engaged, maybe they're a developer, maybe they're not a developer, what are some of the ways that, from your vantage point, because I think you as much as anybody might have like the most insight to what's needed, where right now can people learn about current status, learn about what's needed, and help kind of see opportunities to help make that next 100x happen?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of contributions, one thing to say, like just right off the bat, is that although, like, when you look from the outside in, like, it's not just all engineering contributions that are needed here. Like I said, this next season of building this network into what it can be as a heavy lift for the entire crypto ecosystem is going to require a lot of lift from a lot of people. And so from that standpoint, like, maybe we'll come to engineering last, but in terms of keeping up to speed with things, I think the THORChain accounts and a lot of the community Twitter handles are doing a great job of propagating information. If you want to get a little bit closer to the metal, obviously Discord's a great place. Like, a lot of information is shared there, especially in the dev Discord, about timelines, where things are at from an engineering perspective, what bottlenecks we're currently experiencing, things like that. I know the LPU community is doing a great job in terms of informing things. Same with ThorSwap. So there's a couple of great community Discords that are really good about propagating information. So in terms of those are really good watering holes. Actually, and I mean, like, we'll show you guys a little bit, but I mean, you guys have great newsletters in terms of just synthesizing things. So we've got a lot of good information coming from a lot of places if you want to just keep tuned in. And one of the things that we're going to start doing, like as you mentioned, is like, yesterday, right when the ETH chain actually launched, we were on kind of this, like, on this call behind the scenes, like watching the network, making sure things were going well. And like, we're like, well, shit, let's just hop into Discord and let people ask, like, let's start opening this thing up. And so one thing I think everybody can expect a bit more of is stuff like this, right? So whether it's calls on Discord or Twitter Spaces, calls with the team who's actually building things, so we can ask questions, share where we're seeing things. And I think that's going to be a huge piece of this. Okay, so that's kind of the first piece. Now, how to get involved? There are so many ways to get involved, it's ridiculous. So like I said, if you're not on the engineering side, don't let that be a deterrent, because there's a lot of surface area here. So we'll start with some of the things. So, like, data and analytics, I'll start with one area. So in terms of sharing like, THORChain's got, it's got its own health, right? And so figuring out how to tell the story effectively, like, narrative is extraordinarily important in any domain, and I think you see it a lot in crypto. But figuring out how to inform people about the nature of THORChain, what it's doing, it's not some shitcoin. Like, there's a lot to do. And so sharing the health of the network, figuring out how and what to share, I think is a big piece of that. And so any folks who are interested in, like, just, converging on storytelling and sharing the actual metrics, data, analytics for what THORChain health looks like, and doing that in a consistent way with other community members, like, I think I'll speak for everybody who's up here, is like, feel free to DM any one of us and we'll get you plugged into the stream. Like, there's no separation from what you want to do to actually putting it into action, and we can figure out who you need to get tapped into to make things real. On the other side, like, products on top of this are great. We could use a lot of help with, dashboards, some things for node operators. If it's like, different network states, we have a lot to do there. To move a little bit towards the engineering side, there's a little bit of things on the library side. So things like Midgard and some of the libraries that are just above the core Thor node libraries are areas where we could really use engineering help. Like I said, this next 100x for THORChain looks a lot different, and we've got a lot more surface area that's going to emerge. And so figuring out who are the folks that want to contribute on the engineering side and getting them around the table now, I think is a really good time. So if you're interested on the engineering side, and this could be JavaScript, TypeScript, Go, we've got a lot to work with. So feel free to reach out. And then on the ThorNode side, similarly, if there's folks who are interested in this, in my opinion, this is the confluence of every major network in crypto, and so there's a lot of interesting work here. And so on the engineering side, yeah, highly recommend. And if there's any questions, just shoot any one of us a link. So you've got Son of Odin, you've got anyone, and we're all standing by to take inbound and just chat with you. Yeah, I'm sure there's a bit more, but in terms of liquidity operations, things like that, like there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of ways to contribute. So it's almost like if you have an idea for something you'd like for the ecosystem to have, or a way you'd like to join, or a team you'd like to join, do not hesitate to reach out. Like everybody who's on this call, from listener to speaker, whatever, we're all part of the same thing. We'll get you, like I said, plugged into wherever we can.
Awesome. Yeah. A couple shout outs, just riffing off of what you were saying about telling the story, getting involved, telling the story. You don't have to be a technical or an engineer to get involved at that level. There's some great models for this. Alex Simpson, took the initiative.
He's been doing great stuff.
Yeah. And he, you guys might be familiar with his Twitter threads, and then we're actually now syndicating them on RuneBase. But he's doing great data analysis of things like liquidity pools and depths, and how they affect like price action and that kind of thing. Alex Simpson, ThorNoob, Jatin, and the ThorNoob initiative, where they're doing like weekly Twitter threads about updates in the THORChain ecosystem. Obviously, our friends at Chi Capital, Coleslaw, Thor Lady, all of these great community members who are just doing their part, educating and participating and just telling the story about THORChain, helping it reach a broader audience. And
along those lines too, like what people don't see is all the work that's going on behind the scenes. Like you mentioned Cole and Thor Lady and everybody, like there's a lot of communication behind the scenes, and people are putting in a lot of time to just figure out how to get the information out. So more people will help on this one.
Awesome. And speaking of shout outs here, shout out to our fellow co-host here on stage now, Chad, our friendly chief chat officer of THORChain, the one true Chad.
The official Thor Chad.
The one. Chad, you with us? Looks like you're...
Yep. Sorry, I just had trouble with the mic there. Yeah, I'm here. Listening in.
Chad.
How you guys doing?
Doing great. A pleasure to have you. And actually, Chad and I just got off we finally were able to connect for a RuneBase interview yesterday. And so have that coming out next week. But and we talked a lot about, it was a perfect timing too, because it's such an exciting time for the THORChain ecosystem, and we're starting to see, I heard this analogy once that when you're working on software, and I think THORChain might be the most extreme example of this, but it's like you're building icebergs and you build them from the bottom up, right? And so like 80% of an iceberg is below water, and then it finally, after months or years of work, things start to peak above water. And yesterday was one of those major peaks above water with the Ethereum chain finally restarting. So yeah, Chad, I appreciate your efforts, and on behalf of the whole THORChain community, we really appreciate the work you guys are doing, and thank you for it.
Oh, sure. And I'm just one kind of cog in the machine, in a sense too. Like Gavin and 9realms did a lot of work around all that. There's a bunch of other developers. Like I'm just one cog in the wheel, one cog in the machine.
Awesome. And do you want to give a quick status update? Like what happened yesterday, and explain its significance, like historically or looking forward with THORChain.
Yeah, well, yesterday was kind of like, it's not the last bit, but it's getting pretty close. It was the most intense bit, right, in terms of the restarting of the THORChain protocol. And that's because the two instances we had back in July were done through either ERCT or smart contracting, like manipulations, and so that was kind of the most contentious action, right, by a good margin. And so that's partially why we as the core devs decided to kind of relaunch Ethereum last, is because we just want to have as much time as possible to get as many eyes as possible to reflect, review, audit, all that kind of stuff. And so getting that back online is just kind of like the most difficult part in some sense, right? Which was like kind of quite significant. The next part is doing a churn, which will happen probably in the next week or so. And then also getting raising the caps, I guess, is another kind of milestone. And once you do those things, like everything's back online, everything's trading, everything's like all the functionality is there, and then we can start switching our focus onto our new features like nodes or YIG nodes or synthetics and other things that are kind of planned in the immediate future.
You mind if I add something on the tail end of that, Chad, too? Of one of the pieces on the security side, everybody is really aware of what ThorSec is, and the core team has done an amazing job of working with this kind of these think about it this way. At one of the most stressful times in network development, we all collectively put together this security team, which then augments and changes the development process a little bit. So it's already high stress, and then you add this function that's focused like a laser on just nitpicking everything. And so the core team has done an amazing job of just absorbing this and having this become a part of the development process in a way that boy, it's amazing. And then as a side effect of this, something to understand is where you have really good people, other really good people tend to show up. And so ThorSec, I know it's been said, but it's led by a couple of white hats who are just amazing at what they do. They've been exploiting networks for a while. However, as a result of their involvement, they're able to loop in some amazing people. So on the ETH and ERC20 restart side, one of the guys who explicitly found some exploits in the Geth client most recently, he's involved on the security side, and basically he and his team are the ones who are hammering on the contracts and the router, and they're basically building some what will be open sourced infrastructure that'll be THORChain's security, it'll kind of set a foundation for THORChain's kind of engineering and security infrastructure side, so that we don't have to start from scratch all the time. But either way, that's kind of some of the stuff that happens just behind the scenes that it's not really cool to talk about. However, when you actually realize who's involved and how they're doing it, now, that's not a guarantee of safety, but what it is it's showing that crafting some of these new unique models around how THORChain can secure itself that aren't just the standard practice. It's important for us to do. And so a lot of that stuff is happening. And as a result of some of the foundation that's been laid, some amazing humans are getting involved on the other side. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And, it occurs to me as you're saying that, we have a dedicated team focused on, reviewing every commit, on an ongoing basis. It's not like this is the kind of protocol where you can, QA it once and then have it be solid for different reasons. THORChain has been described as, more complex than any other DEX, certainly, but even any other L1. Chad, can you give some insight into why is that? What is it about THORChain that makes it just orders of magnitude more complicated than other projects in DeFi or crypto?
Yeah, well, so blockchain technology by itself is a very, very complicated thing. It's one of the more difficult things to build in computational science. It's right up there with AI. AI and computational and blockchain are probably the two most difficult kind of fields in the space, right? In the computational science space, and partially because getting a consensus is a difficult thing. It's actually a difficult problem to solve. That's what Satoshi did, back in 2009, effectively, or actually technically earlier than that, but of solving the Byzantine fault tolerance problem, which has been an unsolved problem in computer science for a very long period of time, and this individuals or whatever had cracked it. And so the difficulty that THORChain has is, or at least one of the things it has, is that it's trying to reach a consensus on top of consensus. Mm-hmm. It's got this really kind of meta and kind of stacking concept of you're trying to get multiple blockchains that are all fundamentally designed starkly different from each other in many cases, and you're trying to get them to agree all on a piece of the state of each other, right? You're trying to get almost in a sense, you're trying to get Ethereum to get an agreement on what's happening on Bitcoin, and when Bitcoin, an agreement's happening on Dogecoin, and so forth and so on. And so that is conceptually a very difficult thing to do in many respects. In addition to that, you have to design a new AMM model that makes sense. You have to design a new economic model that makes sense, because the older economic models of how we think about DEXs on layer ones, like on Ethereum, are fundamentally structured very differently. And so you have to think in new ways of solving newer problems, right? We had to think about problems of how do we solve MEV attacks, right? In a sense, and so there's so many innovations. I mean, even just the cryptography itself is also a brand new concept that nobody's ever really done before, and THORChain is probably the biggest implementation of threshold signatures, and I think arguably the first. Maybe Ren was slightly for a couple of months before us, but and that's not even complete MPC. It's got a different mechanism for creating the private keys. But it is a very difficult thing in many respects, economically speaking, cryptography speaking, technically speaking, and then on top of that, you're building a consensus on top of consensus.
Consensus on top of consensus, like reaching not just one other consensus, like L1, but like 5 at this point, and many more to come.
5 at this point. We started with 1 and with Binance, and Binance is arguably the easiest one because it has instant finality, and there's no like programming built, no smart contracting of any kind or programming language built into it. So it's very easy to connect to, and it's very reliable to connect to, with the assumption that like CZ is not going to do something crazy and like change the chain entirely overnight. But like that's arguably the simplest one to do, and we did that one first just to prove the technology, prove the concept, prove the economics, right? All that kind of stuff well over a year ago. And then adding more chains in is just that all those chains take time to bake, right, and to harden and to make sure we get all those things right. When we first launched multi-chain in April, there was a whole host of bugs and issues in those first like month or two that needed to be solved. Like gas got really complicated in many respects. We were actually probably not intentionally, but we actually were attacked by a chain analytics company by sending like dust attacks on Bitcoin onto the network, right? Bitcoin Cash had an attack on the network that was not intentional, where it was changing addresses that we were sending funds to underneath us. Like that was a surprising thing that happened. Like there were so many things that kind of we needed to work out in those first few months that we could not work out in a testnet because testnet functions differently. In some respects, at least, and so that needed time to bake and harden all those things, and like even just that problem by itself, like how do you handle gas? Like that's a hard problem on itself because you have to think about that every chain handles gas differently, right? And some it's like static, like on Binance, and some it's variable, like Bitcoin and Ethereum. But then Bitcoin has like child pays for parent, and Ethereum does not. And if you make a transaction with not enough gas on Ethereum and you want to make a transaction after that, you can't actually do that. You have to you have to cancel the previous one and then make a new transaction with the higher gas amount. Like each chain has their own kind of idiosyncrasies about how you kind of connect and operate on them. And you have to have a network. THORChain has to operate on all of those very efficiently, very reliably, and it has to ensure that transactions are sent out, relatively speaking, now.
Hey, Chad, if you'd just go ahead and make that work, that'd be great.
I mean, that we've been spending. It took us like 2 years to get that work, right? And we're still getting to work now. Like, if fundamentally it functions now, we can all make trades, which is great, and that kind of stuff. But who knows? We might find some more edge cases in the next few months of some wacky stuff happening, or some, like we got into a situation where I think it was, and correct if I'm wrong, like Ethereum got into a split, right? It did a chain split when that Geth client was exploited, right? And people started making all these transactions that caused all these issues. And so like that would have been a problem. It wasn't a problem for us because we happened to have the Ethereum chain, halted at that time. But if we were operating at that moment, like we would have had to solve that problem, right? And most likely what we would have had to done is just halt the Ethereum chain until Ethereum kind of settles out their shit and figured out what the reality is on that chain before we start operating on that. You know what I mean? So like there's all sorts of things that may and probably will happen that will cause all sorts of kind of chaos in a sense, hence ChaosNet, to cause like issues within this network. It's going to be a never-ending struggle to some degree because every chain is going to be making changes and get exploited. I mean, like it's Solana. Like Solana was, fucked by a massive amount of transactions happening, and all the nodes kind of got confused about what the state was, and the chain halted for I think it was like 7 hours or 11 hours, whatever the hell the number was. And so we have to be able to adjust to that in a way that we don't compromise the security of the network and we don't lose, funds because of some, reorganization reorgs of like Solana, for example, which normally you wouldn't see that and you wouldn't expect that, but maybe in this edge case scenario that possibly could happen, right? So the security surface area of THORChain is astronomically large by any DeFi project in the space by, I would argue, a very good margin. And that's just that you just inherit that when you're trying to deal with all of these different chains and getting a consensus on consensus.
Mhm.
And then every time we add a new chain, we're adding in a new opportunity for security to be another issue,
Mhm.
right? We have to analyze, okay, we're adding Ethereum Classic, for example. Well, maybe we don't want to do that because it got a reorg of like some crazy amount of like 40,000 blocks or something insanely large, right, a few months ago. And so we have to think about that as a community of like, what are the security risks of adding this new chain, and what is the value proposition of adding this? Like, how much economic value can it have? How much liquidity can it add to the THORChain network if we add this new chain? And so we all have to think about this question very clearly and come to a community consensus on what we want to do.
Yeah, and actually, to that point, extending on that, each of these integrations with different L1s that are added to the network, they're not like set in stone. Each L1 is having its own updates, its own improvements. Like Ethereum's, will release a new or propose a new EIP and pass it, and then all of a sudden that has implications on THORChain and the work that THORChain's team has to do to keep that chain active. And
yeah, and there's even a possibility that a chain makes some sort of change that is incompatible with THORChain for whatever reason, right? Like, let's assume that a chain adds KYC, for example, which is kind of a bad example, but it's theoretically possible, right? We might have to what we call Ragnarok a chain, right? Just destroy the chain on THORChain, and then all the liquidity just gets dumped out into the people's wallets again. All the LPers get all their funds back. Ideally speaking, if that's even an option, it depends on what the situation is. But like, maybe a chain kind of explodes entirely, and all that liquidity is basically locked up forever because the chain died. Right? That's also possible, right? In some scenarios.
There's an interesting thing though that you're pointing out, right? Like, we opened up the call with a little bit of this of like, all right, so we're going to need to develop some new movements as a network to allow us to kind of absorb these, this growth in chain connections. And one of the thoughts is, and like open to the community here too, is like, it'd be nice for people who are deep in a given network to also step up and maybe volunteer time on like, to be a guardian of a particular connection, right? Where there's somebody who is dedicated. Let's say we've got the, Terra connection coming up, right? And so somebody or, one or two people who are just like deep on that network who effectively function as guardians of that network connection, where basically they're keeping an eye on that ecosystem. And if anything's coming down the pipe where it's like, hey, this is a major change in the protocol, this is an X or Y or Z, where we basically have, pods or groups of people who are functioning as the kind of points of connection. And this is beyond just the engineering, but folks who are dedicated to a given area. I think that's an area that could use some development and figuring out just, as this thing starts to grow. But there's a lot of ways to approach the problem that Chad's kind of talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would love to see a world where we have ambassadors to foreign chains, like Bitcoin ambassadors and Ethereum ambassadors and Solana like people who are deeply, as Gavin was just saying, deeply seated in that community and our community that can operate to help keep our community up to date of like, hey, there's a big change happening on Solana that maybe it has implications to THORChain, and we need to think about how does it affect us, right? Like IP 1559, like that's a change that was happening downstream. Does that affect us in any way? Do we need to make code changes to be compatible with the new change? No, we don't in that particular case. Or maybe with Taproot or Schnorr, like does that affect the compatibility that THORChain has with that particular chain? All those things need to be kind of kept an eye on and kind of keep your finger on the pulse. And I'm not going to do that, to be honest with you. There's just too many chains, and I'm just too spread out as already. We're going to need, I think, individuals to kind of step up and be ambassadors to particular chains and kind of keep us into the know and manage those relationships.
Yeah. So speaking of which, I mean, and you think about like we talked about the opening of this call a little bit about like, what are ways that the community can kind of hop in. This is one of those domains where it's like, if you like, it's a multi-chain world already. So if you already like THORChain overlaps with a lot, it's going to overlap with more. And so if there's a chain or an ecosystem that you like, we're listening to, like you particularly like, drop one of us a DM and let's start creating this role together, because this is one of those domains where like maybe on the weekly call or maybe on weekly calls on Discord, we wind up having these folks share, hey, this is what's going on in that ecosystem. This is what could affect us. And all this stuff just winds up becoming just a part of how this network runs. But yeah, that's definitely an area for involvement.
Yeah. I was going to call that out too. And I see our colleague here at Nine Realms, Orion, he and I have been kind of jamming on this idea, and I think he called this role the guardians. Like each chain will have a guardian,
Yeah.
and it's like a community
Yeah.
ambassador. And that's what we're shouting out to. And so, tying this notion of like THORChain's complexity in with how the community can get involved, to Gavin's point here, there's going to be this opportunity for anybody who wants to help, just basically, be the ambassador, be the kind of have eyes on updates on a particular chain, and then as different proposals or different updates kind of come onto the frontier or come onto the horizon for that, making sure that the THORChain core team and development team is kind of aware of that and kind of helping to manage and negotiate that integration point. So I guess Gavin or Chad, what would be, if someone wanted to help step up into that role, what would be a good way for them to raise their hand for that?
We got to create this thing, and so just DM one of us, and
Cool.
we're going to create it together. So there's not really a spec, and again, nobody's really kind of done or created a role or an ecosystem like this, and so we've got to do this, from the ground up, which is how everything has been done here. And so just DM one of us, and we can talk through it. It's like, what's the domain or what's the ecosystem that you're interested in? Like, what would this look like? And we can figure out, what's the information that would be useful? How can we share it? And maybe how can we create some rituals around sharing it with the broader community and the engineering team, and basically making sure that this works. Because, I think this is how it's like THORChain is this unique grand central station of connectivity. And so as the connective tissue, like the metaphor of like, people are always obsessed with the muscles because that's what's obvious, but THORChain is kind of this like nervous system. It's the connective tissue between things that's a little bit less obvious. And so getting involved here and figuring out how to make these connections work really well, I think is some of the magic behind this. So anybody that wants to get involved from that standpoint, we got to craft this right now from the ground up. So be part of it.
Man, that was a world-class analogy right there. I'm like, I'm in awe. I'm like, people are obsessed with the muscles because that's obvious, but THORChain is the connective tissue. That's or the nervous system. That's powerful. So awesome. So let's do something fun here. First off, we have a couple friends on stage as well. We have Bull and Badgers. These two guys, I can't say enough about like their hustle. I mean, they're out there alongside ThorSwap, ZeroX Ventures, and THORChad's DAO. I feel like I'm working alongside these guys across like 5 or 6 different initiatives in the ecosystem. I'm gonna give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves really quickly, and then talk about a bit about what's going on at your level. There's a really exciting announcement. I think was it just this morning. Guys, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Mr. Badgers,
thank you.
How are you?
Thanks for letting me be on stage. Yeah, Nugan.
Hey guys.
Nice to see you.
Hi everyone.
Do you guys want to introduce yourself real quick and then talk about I teased it a little bit here, but what did you guys just announce that we have to look forward to here?
So I'm Uncle Badgers, project manager at ThorSec, and I work with the Bull as well. Bull, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm the Bull. I think maybe everyone knows me as well, maybe.
Man, the Bull needs no introduction.
Yeah, on Discord.
The man
Twitter,
who doesn't
everywhere.
sleep.
Yeah, the man who works too much.
Awesome. And what's the latest? I mean, you guys are involved in a bunch of different things, but what's the latest with you guys? What's going on in your world?
I almost lost the count for the things we are working on right now. So much going on.
We revealed NFT trophies this morning on a live EMA reveal on Discord. That was pretty fun. And then also you might have just seen the article as well about the THORSwap token launch as well. Just Medium just posted a couple of hours ago actually. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. November the 1st is our launch date hopefully. And so launching on Thor Starter with a cap of $300 per wallet. And then after that, a few days after, I think November the 3rd, will be a THORChain token launch as well. So you'll pool asymmetrically with Rune to acquire Thor. And then we'll be on Sushi. And hopefully it goes all smooth. And the best, well, that's biased from me, but the best interface currently built for THORChain is launching. So it's pretty exciting, I would say.
Yeah, exciting time. And the NFT reveals looked great. It looked like 4 of the 8 NFT trophies, and these NFT trophies from THORChain's DAO are, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're NFTs that people can earn just by taking different actions in the THORChain ecosystem.
Yeah, so the first season's basically a little hint on the THORChain score. So it's basically a challenge system that analyzes your on-chain metrics of how you've used your wallet in THORChain and how you use your wallet in THORSwap. So we want people to, go on the site and calculate the score. We're releasing an update next week on the THORChain score as well. And we have quite a few good projects that we're partnered with and within the DeFi world who want to utilize THORChain score, let's say. I can't really say much yet, but all will be revealed next week.
Awesome. I'm happy to tease that we are working with like THORGuards is collaborating with THORChain score. So THORGuards, we'll leave that a full announcement for later, but there will be an integration there. So we'll the first of many collaborations between THORGuards and THORChain's DAO here to come. That's super exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And then the THORSwap IDO Monday. What is it? Monday, November 1st. It's here in about a week and a half on THORStarter. This is going to be the Thor token, which awesome ticker symbol, and you guys are truly worthy of the name there. And can you give people an idea of why they should be excited about the Thor token and the THORSwap IDO?
Sorry, Nugan, you cut out for me. So Bill, if you heard what you said, you could answer.
Yeah. Can you repeat that again?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I was just saying, can you give people an idea of why they should be excited about the Thor token and the upcoming IDO?
Well, in my personal opinion, I believe THORSwap is building a Godspeed. So we're working on many products right now, especially excited for THORChain DAO. Yeah, I'm excited because we have a long roadmap till next year. Yeah, we are pretty busy.
Awesome.
Can't say so much on the upcoming products, but yeah, it's very exciting. I'm very excited.
Sure, and
the synergy is unreal as well.
I just received the questions on Telegram. Crypto Batman is asking who's managing Toriel right now. Yeah, I'm proud to say that THORSwap is managing Toriel and is being updated. And an update should come already the next week. We are also working on the iOS app with Big Boss that I think some community members don't know already him. Yeah, it will be massively updated. It will be I hope it will be the leading app for the THORChain ecosystem because I'm working really hard to make it happen. Awesome. Yeah, I'm very excited for the future.
Awesome. Yeah, we're all excited for you. So if anybody wants to learn more about that, they can check out THORSwap or THORStarter has a lot of great resources, including a recent AMA with you guys. We published the recap of that on runebase.org as well. THORStarter itself, extremely exciting time for THORStarter. We have a partly what we want to do with these calls is invite more of the ecosystem founders and builders onto the stage as well. But in lieu of them being here right now, our friends at THORStarter have announced. So the next IDOs are THORSwap. And then I believe I'm blanking on this if it's either Thor Wallet or Thor Wallet and then Mine Network. THORStarter has also announced that they are beginning development on a Terra ecosystem integration. So they're going to be moving cross chain here and being able to launch Terra ecosystem projects. I connected with a team here in Austin over the course of the week, and they told me that they put out this bounty asking for introductions to Terra ecosystem projects. You guys might have seen this, and the inbound that they got was ridiculous, like over 25 introductions already. And so we have a lot to look forward to from that. And the ETH chain restart, we don't want to talk too much about price, but THORStarter had a hell of a day yesterday. And we're looking forward to more of that good energy for the upcoming launches. As well, Broker Finance released their Q4 2021 roadmap. They are also doing a Terra and Mirror integrations. There'll be the ability to provide liquidity on THORChain. They'll have long farms on Mirror. They'll have delta neutral strategies, and Broker is aiming to provide a super user-friendly interface that abstracts away all of these like complicated DeFi primitives and give users a very simple interface through which they can earn DeFi yields, but without the complexity. They're also going to be building on top of THORChain synthetics, which actually, Chad, you mentioned this earlier, or Gavin, about some of the things that are coming up, like light nodes and synthetic assets. I saw a teaser about this on THORChain Twitter. It's actually the pinned tweet right now, but it looks like we have THORChain mainnet to look forward to by Christmas. Is that a fact? Can we do we have that imminent as so?
Well, I'm not sure you can call it a fact per se because it hasn't happened yet. But I think the intention or the goal that we have is we want to get to mainnet by the end of the year. So we start off 2022 with mainnet status, or however you want to call it, and then 2022 becomes like the year of THORFi effectively, and we'll just be very fixated on just building new DeFi protocols into THORChain and launching those, and just adding more things you can do on cross-chain way. I mean, that'll be pretty significant as well.
Yeah, and actually, you gave me some really interesting perspective into this. For anybody, so there's a lot coming to THORFi. There's the AMM, and there's like the DEX, but there's also savings and lending and composites and synthetic assets, and if anybody's like just curious, like I was, like how can THORChain just build all that so quickly, like here over the course of the next few months, when it's obviously such complex, like the entire platform is complex. Chad, can you give a bit of insight about how, like you mentioned, like this like 1% ratio of like how much code goes into like creating, for example, like the DEX primitives. Like once you have this like cross chain kind of like logic built, the comparative, the relative ease with which you can layer on these other primitives.
Yeah, I mean, well, so the THORChain code base is very large and very complex, right? And even just the threshold signatures alone is probably about 10x larger than almost every DeFi protocol on Ethereum. Oh, wow. Just the threshold signatures by itself.
Oh man,
not even including anything else. And so if you actually look at the code and you look at the actual, like the swap logic of how you actually swap, the business logic of exchanging asset A to asset B, that logic is, relatively speaking, is very, very small. It's only like a few thousand lines of code, like maybe 2,000 or 3,000, something like this. I'm going to guesstimate, out of a code base that's like hundreds of thousands of lines of code, right? So it's actually a very small part of the actual code is the swapping, the AMM itself. Most of that code is around like securing assets and securing the network itself and churning and like Yggdrasils and Asgard vaults and like Bifrost and like chain clients for all these things, like all that stuff, right? All that kind of framework and infrastructure to have a functional chain that can connect cross-chain agnostically. The actual business logic of AMM is relatively small and relatively simple. And so when you want to build something like, Thor Savings, for example, the actual code complexity in terms of like the number of lines is relatively small. It's only probably going to be, probably a few thousand lines of code. It has to be vetted, it has to be tested, it has to be audited, like all these things, of course, and that takes time. But relative to what has been already constructed, it's relatively small. And so, building these things, can be done very quickly, as they are typically done on Ethereum, because all you're doing in Ethereum is just building business logic. You're not building chain security. You're not building anything else other than just like some swap logic for most dexes on Ethereum, which is, relatively speaking, quite simple. And so you can build these features relatively fast, but the actual process of writing the code is really quick, but the process of validating, testing, and auditing all this stuff can take months, right? And so it's kind of an interesting thing of like the dev process is going to be significantly slower on building lending than it was building the AMM stuff, because the AMM stuff was built while the chain didn't exist quite yet, and we could just kind of move fast and break things at that point in time before the chain actually existed and it was, trading actual funds and all that kind of stuff. And so that's, since we launched a live chain, it's now, you now have to be much slower in your dev cycle. And then since the July, we've added ThorSec into the process and other teams into the process of development. And that obviously is going to slow things down even further. And that's probably the appropriate and the thing to do. You don't want to be, move fast and break things when you have hundreds of millions of dollars of other people's money riding on the line here.
Yep.
You want to be slower, more calculated, more careful, and all that kind of stuff. And even these features, when we do launch them, like synthetics, for example, will be ramped up. It won't be just turn it on and it's full fledged 0 to 88 miles per hour. So to speak. It's going to be, synthetics will probably have a cap of like 5% of the depth of the pools will be allowed to be minted on the network, just to keep the exposure very, very, very small. So if there is a problem, it wouldn't be a massive issue in a sense, right? And then we'll kind of, just as we raise the caps, we'll raise the synthetics caps, right? And so we'll get up to probably 33% eventually. Same thing with lending, same thing with Thor savings. It'll probably start with a fixed rate of maybe 5% in the very beginning, and then we'll ramp it up as we get more and more confidence and clarity, and make sure there's no economic issues, technical issues that could exploit funds in one form or another. We want to start small, start simple, and then ramp up over time slowly and carefully as the code and the chain kind of proves its viability, reliability, security, resiliency, these kind of things.
Will these primitives, will these be shipping during ChaosNet, or will it wait for mainnet?
Some before and some after,
Okay.
right? So synthetics will probably ship, before mainnet happens. Light nodes will ship before light node that happens. We'll probably add a bunch of chains before mainnet is hit. We'll probably add, Dogecoin, and I think Dash and Decredit are on the docket, and a few others, I think. Those ones are relatively easy to do because they're pretty low. They're pretty much the same as what we already built, and so they're very similar to easy to implement. Other ones that are more complex, like Solana and like Monero, are much more technically complex. Zcash is actually pretty easy to do because it has two different types of addresses, so that makes it a lot easier to implement with. And I think Nine Realms is working on Atom, the Gaia chain, along with Terra. Those should be relatively simple because Binance chain is actually a Cosmos chain. So the code we have for Binance will, I think, 80% is probably the same, right? And so those will be a little bit easier to implement, I think, and to validate.
Awesome.
Yes, but so I think on this side of 2020, of this side of the year of in 2021, I think we'll see a few ThorFi things, but we probably won't see Thor savings. We might see Thor savings. Actually, that might actually happen. It's possible. We'll definitely see synthetics. We'll definitely see a bunch more chains added to the network, and I think definitely going to see light nodes or gig nodes, where I might be calling them. But major ThorFi features will be next year, I think.
Awesome. Well, we're excited for it. Before we wrap up here, a couple things. First off, we're joined by Thad. Thad is like marketing, one of the marketing director for ThorStarter. So we got that on stage here, and then also just in the remaining minutes here, we can take a few questions from the audience. If anybody wants to raise your hand or request to hop on, we can get you up and then invite you up for the last few minutes here.
And Alan, I'll just say that you did a great overview of what we got going at ThorStarter. Obviously, we've got this kind of backlog of awesome ThorFi we've been waiting to launch. It was our original goal for why we exist. And yeah, you did a great overview of what we're doing there, as well as our Q4 move to Terra, which we are very excited about. So onwards, thank you for covering for us there. You know the story.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, we love you guys. I loved this tweet that THORChain, the THORChain Twitter had a little while ago, but like, an investment in or like investing in Rune is an investment in a multi-chain future, and then investing in X-Rune is an investment in the THORChain ecosystem. So we love you guys. And speaking of the THORChain ecosystem, got some updates here from our friends at XDeFi Wallet. They're not able to make the call today. But as a lot of you know, they had their public launch last week. XDeFi being the cross-chain MetaMask. It's like MetaMask, but works across, I think, 6 different chains currently. and more to come. It was incubated inside of THORChain, and then is currently just the best way to use a THORChain enabled exchange. And they have gained 10,000 users since their public launch. They're like THORStarter, their Terra release, and THORChain itself, their Terra release is imminent as well. So we have that to look forward to. Yeah, for anybody that is not on it, definitely check out xdefi.io. They have somehow managed to make software that is both more powerful and easier to use than the incumbent, which is a kind of paradoxical combination. Normally complexity and normally simplicity and power are exist sometimes at odds, and they've managed to combine both a more powerful, useful tool with easier to use one.
Can I throw something out on the side of that?
Please.
So one thought is like, when you are doing something relatively interesting or halfway interesting in the world, the side effects of it are things that change the industry, even just the side effects of its presence. And one thing to notice is like, so like when they were designing TCP/IP, like the protocol itself way back in the day, it was the side effects of just lazily passing packets around and things like that. They were like discoveries effectively that were things that we now take as givens. Anyways, for everybody listening, like the things that are shaking out of the THORChain ecosystem, like xDefi and some of these projects, like the side effects of us all working together on this are things that are improving the multi-chain space, because it's like multi-chain crypto is in its complete infancy. If crypto is kind of starting to learn to walk, multi-chain is like barely, it's not even crawling, right? And so we're building all these tools from the ground up together. But a lot of the tools that are shaken out in terms of like what you just said, there's a paradox of usability as well as a massive increase in complexity, but they're nailing it. And it's the same thing with THORChain itself, right? There's an increase in complexity, but the abstractions are working, and so it does too. But just the point of like getting involved in this ecosystem is going to put you at the center point of all this of this kind of intersection, right? And so a lot of the things that we're already seeing shake out kind of point in that direction of like, there's some interesting stuff happening here, and just putting yourself in orbit will likely put you into, you'll have a good purview of what's unfolding just across everything.
Yeah. What are some of the things that are also missing? I mean, that are wallet infrastructure, liquidity pools that enable things like an AMM index. What are some other kind of cross-chain primitives that are yet to evolve?
Really good multi-chain multi-sig. Like in the same way that we've got a lot of amazing tools in the Ethereum ecosystem for managing DAOs and things like that. None of that stuff really exists to go across, to hop from, Ethereum into Terra per se, or onto Solana. Like, so a lot of that you wind up on these central network kind of you use different networks for given capabilities. So that's one that jumps out to me, that a lot of people are building, or that you've got to like find some workaround solution. But there's going to be a lot. Like you kind of take things for granted in your own ecosystem until you step into the multi-chain space.
Yeah. And actually, one other very simple thing that I've noticed is just cross-chain data aggregators. So if you go to like DeFi Pulse, you're going to be missing actually a lot of DeFi activity because of its I don't know, it's very much focused on the Ethereum ecosystem, and they might have a few others going now, but like I don't think that THORChain and THORChain exchanges are indexed on DeFi Pulse, for example, and
they're definitely not.
Yeah, so that's an omission, and like just like anything else, it adds surface area for complexity there. But yeah, so time will tell. Be so good they can't ignore you. I think it would be at a certain point a glaring omission, but an even more obvious one over time here. So yeah. Oh, real quick, just brought a familiar cow up on stage. I think here's a guy who's building something really unique for the THORChain ecosystem. I know, Chad, you are already a beneficiary of this. Gavin, I'm sure you will be as well. And I just received my first pair of this little surprise gift. But familiar cow, you want to say hello and give a quick intro about what you're working on?
Hey, what's up, everybody? So I'm Familiar Cow, and I'm running Veneer Threads, and you might have seen what we're doing with the Thor Force One. I've been around on Twitter a little bit, trying to put something out there for the community that really just shows THORChain in the way that everyone should be scrolling through their feed, saying like, "Oh my God, what is that? I need to learn about THORChain. I I'm a Thor Chad. I need to own one of these sneakers. We're building NFTs that can be redeemed for physical items. And we just started with this Thor Force 1 project. Super excited about it. I don't want to take too much time away from everything else that's going on here. I know we're on a time crunch, but we're doing an auction this weekend for 10 pairs of the Thor Force 1. So if you haven't seen it, check out the THORChain Twitter, Veneer Threads on Twitter, and see what's going on. Chad's got one. Wynn's got one. Wynn's got one. Eric Voorhees, all recipients of the Thor Force 1, and it's something I just really wanted to put out there to the community to show how much we care about the values of THORChain, decentralization, immutability, being able to trade freely across chains. So it's just a thank you to the community, really.
Yeah. Chad, what did you think about your Thor Force 1s?
Oh, those things are awesome. So I've had the privilege of wearing them once, and I wore them to a conference I just did in London last week or the week before, wherever it was, and they're so sick. But here's the thing: is I don't even want to wear them.
I'm not wearing them. Cal told me to wear them. I was like,
so nice.
I don't think they're supposed to be worn.
I just think they're gonna be worth like $1 million, whatever, in the 6 months or a year, or whatever. This is just my crazy brain going off the rails here. But I don't even want to wear them because this would be worth so much, and I don't want to sell them either. I'm just gonna hodl the fuck out of them. You know what I mean? Just kind of put them on my shelf at home and just kind of look at them.
I want to say this to everybody for the auction. I realize this is kind of a dilemma. You pay for the sneakers and you might not want to wear them. So for everyone if you purchase from the auction, there's only one pair per size in the world right now. It's size 8 to 13. So there's only one chance to get your size, if your size is even there. I'm sorry if you got small feet. But if you do purchase from the auction, you will get a free mint when we do a minting event for 222 pairs in a couple weeks. So you don't have to worry. If you buy from the auction, you will get a free mint for a second pair, so you can rock them all day. And Chad, you better wear them, man.
I'm not. I can't. I'm gonna put them on a shelf behind me so that like when I stream or when I'm on Zoom calls, people can see them. But if I get the auction, I'll do that. But I gotta hand it to you, Cal. I've been seeing the photos. I saw Chad's unboxing video, and it's one thing to see that video. I didn't think too much of it. I didn't think too much of it. Think too much about it, I should say. Before I saw them and I experienced it, you really didn't cut any corners. It is a really premium experience. The unboxing, the box, the details. I was blown away, man. I did not have any expectations, and you just blew them completely away. So definitely, good luck with that. I'm really happy to support you on that. It's just a really fun manifestation of this THORChain spirit, which we all appreciate. Is not only is the tech incredible, and we'd be remiss not to talk about the opportunity, the investment opportunity we all see is one of the most representing one of the most outsized lopsided bet opportunities in crypto today. But then beyond that, just the community, there's something about this, the energy of the ecosystem, the community, the developers, the projects, and Veneer Threads is a really just fun, cool extension of that. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Chad, Gavin, thank you guys. Bull, Badgers, appreciate you, Thad. And thank all you guys for attending. This has been super fun. Again, this will be the first of a weekly series going forward. We'll do 2 a month in the US. Next week, we'll hand the baton to Thor Lady, who will host twice a month this weekly call on Fridays for the Asia time zones. So we'll get that global coverage. We are going to be publishing the recordings and written recaps at runebase.org. So you can share that with people who weren't able to make it. I see a lot of familiar faces and community members here on the call here. So DeFi Spot, Acro, Coleslaw, Chad Thorough, Tradium. We'll open up the stage for more for more conversation from the community in the future ones. That was kind of the intention, but kind of ran with this opportunity Gavin, I think you and I have been trying to coordinate an interview for like, I don't know, as long as we've known each other now. And we're just,
This is the perfect time.
This is the perfect time. And so this is a great impromptu interview with you and Chad. So thank you guys for lending your knowledge, time, and insights and wisdom and everything.
Thanks for putting this together. This is exactly what this next season is about.
The next 100x for THORChain, y'all. You heard it here first. It's something that Gavin's been kicking around behind closed doors here for a little while, but here we'll peek head above water. Next 100x for THORChain starts now. Our Solana moment imminent. We think. I don't know. Not financial advice. Don't seek your financial advisor, et cetera, et cetera. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining.